Welcome back to the Creepy Files. Today we're going to cover a series called the Analog Archives. If you saw my video on Local 58, you'll be familiar with this format. It's essentially a series of tapes or broadcasts from a TV, and things go wrong. There are 8 in this series, so let's cover them as best we can. The first one is called Safety and Information. It appears to be an introductory tape for people getting a new television set. It stresses that you are required by law to view this tape. It talks about the basic function of a TV, but also more importantly, the dangers. It shows us that nefarious individuals can hijack the TV and play their own programs. These hijack waves are shown in red. Red and orange are very important to this series, so pay attention. It says an alert warning will be posted if someone has hijacked the airwaves, and it warns of watching the malicious broadcast, saying it can cause great psychological and physiological harm. We're also introduced to the Sunset Corporation, which appears to be behind 90% of these tapes. The second broadcast is called Amber Alert. It appears as a normal local television broadcast. The only thing of note is that children's programming starts at 2:20 a.m. The broadcast is interrupted by a child abduction emergency that is in effect until 2:20 a.m. It's also important to note that it shows a list of affected communities. These come back later. The broadcast essentially becomes a series of warnings. Some telling you not to listen to law enforcement until 2:20 a.m., some telling you that local authorities have warned you not to help anyone you see outside, and some of the warnings are unmarked and red. Then this unmarked red warning says, "The Orange Night beckons us. Follow all necessary procedures." It says that access to communication with public education is not available, and we see the statement, "The sons of blood long for probably sunset." Then, 12:45, October 13th, we see a figure in orange and blue standing in the road. And finally, a new updated warning saying 6 victims identified. Children scream. Suspect dead. Effective until further notice. The next video, titled Mall of the Future, seems to be an ad provided by Sunset Corp about a new mall. Mostly, it's an ad for all the new things that are at this mall, but the fine print at the bottom tells us what we need to know. Essentially, it's saying to stay inside and sleep during the night of July 12th. It seems like something big is going to happen that night, but Sunset Corporation doesn't want you to know about it. You are required to take sleeping pills, even though they're dangerous, on the night of July 12th. Then it starts breaking down, telling you not to look into their eyes, and you're only imagining it. The next broadcast, titled Physics, is basically a tape from a student experiment at a community college. They were testing spectral frequencies, which apparently exist between light wavelengths. These spectral frequencies are shown in red. Essentially, when a test subject was exposed to these, they became distorted and experienced extreme psychological trauma, but no physical harm. It also says God is an illusion at the end in a notes section that is distorted and red. Next, we have a video titled Prayer Service. This one is important, but the details aren't. It starts like a normal prayer service, then it brings up the Orange Night. Then it lists all the commandments, and they list them wrong. It starts talking about the Orange Night, consuming the fruit, eating thy neighbor, and sacrificing children. Finally, it ends with there is no God. Nature Show is when things really start breaking down. It starts out as a nature in your county show, but then things start to glitch out. We see imagery of demons crawling through woods and streets, and it begins talking about blood lakes before it is interrupted by warnings and the viewer being told to go to sleep. Home surveillance is a very unique one. We see the interface menu for a set of security cameras created by Watchful Eye Security Solutions. Whoever is using it starts the playback of one of the tapes. Everything is fine at first, but then we start seeing things in the windows. The baby's crib is bloody and there's blood dripping from the ceiling, and then we see the living room covered in blood and it zooms in on an eye on the ground. The final tape, Travel Guide, is by far my favorite. The aesthetic and vibe of the whole thing is just perfect. The video appears to be a tape from a camera of a man driving around. The sky is orange and it grows more and more stormy and dark as the night goes on. He stops at a lot of different locations, giving off the names. These are places we've heard about in the previous tapes, including a playground from the Amber Alert tape. At one point, we hear a public warning over his car radio. I think it's pretty clear that this is the Orange Night. Eventually, when the darkness and storm have really picked up, he drives into the woods. A figure in orange and blue appears in front of the car, and we get the message, "A gift for him." And then we see the car crashed and in flames. Then an inhuman hand reaches for the camera and the tape ends. Alright, there is a lot of loose ends to tie up, and I don't think I can get all of them, but I want to tell you my interpretation of the story of this series. This whole theme of the orange sky being a day of summoning of demons and sacrifice, you might think immediately that the Sunset Corporation is behind all of this. But I don't think it is. The Sunset Corporation may be shady, but think about it. All the officially mandated stuff has been to protect citizens from these events, to keep them indoors and stop them from viewing hijacked airwaves. Now, in the beginning, it sounded like Sunset Corp was trying to feed propaganda to the citizens of Hanson County to stop them from seeing the outside world. And while it may be true that it's propaganda, their goal is to stop the Orange Night. So what is that? Well, some sort of demotic entity or entities coming from the sky are trying to open a portal and let themselves into our world. Apparently, they're doing so in Hanson County for some reason. Their way of doing this needs worshippers, people on the other side, to open the portal. That's what this apple or fruit is. They're attempting to get you to forget your beliefs and instead see them as gods. These are the hijacked airwaves, the spectral frequencies that we see in physics. The orange entity's attempt at leading the people of Hanson County to open the portal. The Orange Night is when they finally plan to invade. It kind of gives a new meaning to the term Amber Alert. Sunset Corp isn't trying to say, look out for the children. It's too dangerous to tell citizens to interact with those who have already turned, or the monsters that may have slipped through the cracks. Those child sacrifices are already gone. Sunset is trying to keep people from knowing about this invasion, in fear that if people know, they'll be more vulnerable to its persuasion. However, the person in the travel guide video seems to be uncovering this. On the Orange Night, he goes to different locations where things have happened, but in the end, he dies. So, was Sunset successful in stopping the invasion? At first, it may not seem like it. I mean, the last tape doesn't end on a cheerful note. But something I haven't mentioned yet is the description. All of these tapes are supposedly recovered in the 2010s, 2013, 2015. The tapes themselves date back to the 90s, and the newest being from the 2000s. Meaning, even though something happened on the Orange Night, there's still people around in the 2010s just discovering this stuff. Meaning, in some way, the Sunset Corp was successful at stopping the Orange Night invasion. But at what cost? We may never know. What did you think of this episode of the Creepy Files? Let me know in the comments and suggest what I should cover next on my Twitter or Instagram. See you all next time.
Come on, just give it a try.
All right, maybe just a little.
So everybody from the 313.